The worst thing is this make-believe.
It's the last comfort we can give the master.
Comfort? Comfort? What about Father's dignity?
I hardly need you to instruct me about that.
Then for God's sake, stop this farce!
Do you think it's easy for me?
I only wish you could have been spared the decision, Lady Mew.
I'm positive that we're doing right.
Absolutely not.
I only hope I've convinced Mr. Elliot.
You know, when the doctors told me, as a result of their rummaging, that this was merely an ulcer, I was surprised to find how inquisitive one is. I wanted to know if the college would ever make up its mind about the beehives and the garden, or whether old Gay's son would really get a job at Edinburgh. And I should have hated not to see young Roy Calvert's magnum opus come out next year. Remember the trouble we had getting him elected, Elliot?
Sure.
Like elects like, of course. Dull men elect dull men. But I should have hated not to see our colleagues' faces when Roy's book appears, and they're told he's the most remarkable scholar this society has contained for 50 years.
We've got to get our minds around the fact that the master's dying.
Speaking as a man with medical training, I must confirm the Dean's assessment of the situation.
Speaking as a man, I find it intolerable that the master shouldn't be allowed to come to terms with it.
It's very hard to be party to such deception.
Yes. I've seen him myself.
It's quite certain he'll soon be well.
That's appalling.
Lady Muriel had a dreadful decision to take.
Bloody awful.
Of course, appalling. It's not a choice one would wish on another human being. But I still think that she should have told him.
Looks though I am to suggest it, I'm inclined to think the senior tutor may be wrong. This may mean a few more days or weeks of happiness for him.
No. No, a man has the right to decide how to meet his own death. Like you, I've never been on the best of terms with the master. But he always faced the truth, even when it was grim. He's the last man who should be drugged by lies now that he's facing eternity.
I wish I'd said that. Well, Jago's not perfect. He's not well known enough. He's got some of the qualities I want in a master.
He takes pains with people.
Yeah. Handled right, he could be an asset as a fundraiser.
Won't you have a glass of Chablis, Elliot? I opened it at luncheon, and we thought it rather special.
Thank you.
Much as I like him, I'm not sure that I could find it in my conscience to back Jago.
How's that?
Why? If he were elected, the senior tutorship would fall vacant. With all due modesty, I might well be in the running for it.
Those sort of scruples are morally dubious as well as intellectually dishonest.
Can't refuse to back the right man simply because he might do you a bit of good.
I suppose not.
You suppose right. Now, bend your mind to something useful. What's the opposition likely to be?
Crawford, I suppose. I'm not keen.
All the same, he's academically distinguished.
Oh, he'll certainly be run.
He must be better known outside the college than anyone else.
The possible exception of old Gay.
Now, there's a thought.
Mercifully, he's over age.
Winslow.
You can't be serious.
You've not seen a master elected, have you, Elliot?
A kind of collective madness seems to
I
develop.
must say, I'm depressed at the whole prospect.
About Jago?
Yeah. He'd be a good master, in my judgment.
I'd put it stronger than that and say that he's the best master we've got. We don't want to run him, though, unless he's got plenty of support.
No, that'd do no good to anyone.
Are you confident that he's willing to be a candidate?
Give yourself some more sherry, Mr. Elliot.
Not for me, thank you.
It's Monteliado.
It's excellent.
It is supposed to be the best there is.
Sorry to have deserted you.
Well, don't apologize to me. Apologize to Mr. Elliot. The poor man's had to try and make conversation with me.
If that's the worst that happens to him this term, he'll be lucky.
Do you think your pupils might try to be a little more considerate?
Have you been talking to Elliot about the new George Orwell?
No.
You should have done. The Road to Wigan Pier almost converted me to socialism.
That'll be the day.
You'll excuse me if I take the senior tutor away.
Oh, please don't disturb yourself.
Matter of college business.
I've learned to know when I'm not wanted.
I'm sorry if... No, you're quite right. Ours is a masculine society. The trouble is that Alice, at the best of times, tends to think that she is insufficiently appreciated. Oh, please sit down. Oh, dear. One is dreadfully vulnerable through those one loves, isn't one? But then, you know that, don't you? As well as any man alive.
Are you prepared to be a candidate for the mastership?
My dear Elliot, I'm most touched.
Unless I'm much mistaken, quite a few of us were struck by what you had to say about Royce the other night.
Thank you. Whether I'm academically distinguished or not...
I don't think that's as important in a master as his human qualities.
Yes. Well, I can't pretend that I haven't thought about it. In fact, I've had sleepless nights over it ever since I realized that it was a possibility. But you know, for all my 4 in the morning misgivings, I honestly believe that I could do the job. Yes, I believe I could do it better than anyone within reach. So if enough people want me, I have no choice.
What's happening about the mastership?
I gather names are being bandied about. How do you feel about Crawford?
I'm not especially enthusiastic.
Odd. Thought you might go for a scientist.
I might if it weren't Crawford. You can hardly let a day pass without reminding me that he's a fellow of the Royal Society and I'm not.
It's ridiculous. He's got a good many years' start, hasn't he?
As he never fails to remind me. I've been up for election 6 times. This year's my 7th.
Jago's the other name that seems to be attracting support.
Jago. I've nothing against him.
Nonsense. Sheer bloody nonsense.
Well, who do you want?
Crawford, of course. He's the obvious choice.
Conceited, shallow, he's a third-rate man.
He's a first-rate scientist.
He's insufferably pleased with himself.
He's got the right opinions and he's not afraid to utter them. If you'd had to deal with my Whitehall masters, you'd know that it would be useful to have the master of a Cambridge college who's willing to speak out against the fascists and the appeasers.
Yes, but think what it'd be like within the college.
Which side are you on?
Politically, I'm as far left as you, and you know it. I just happen to think that in this job, human qualities come first.
Oh, that's utterly irresponsible. That's the kindest word I can find for it.
You better leave it.
Yes, well, Jago's not a commonplace man, you've got to admit.
That's my whole point.
Don't bite my head off, old chap. I've just spent the afternoon with the master planning the next 2 years we're going to spend collaborating on that little book of his about the heresies. He was like a dog with 2 tails at the prospect. And I kept smiling and nodding. The whole time I was thinking, but you won't be there. You won't be there. God knows how it didn't come out. It's dreadful to have to pretend like that.
Yes.
The irony is I've been trying to dodge that particular project for years. Now I suppose I shall have to do it as a memorial. Still, the point I was trying to make about Jago is that he's out of the ordinary. All that pride and feeling. Not to mention his pathetic wife. They will never really think he's son, will they?
Arthur Brown's for him.
Now, Uncle Arthur loves odd fish.
And I suspect Crystal thinks that he can manage him. I doubt whether he's right.
It'd be extremely funny if he isn't.
I must say it's fascinating to watch those two at work.
You are sure you're being objective about all this?
I'm not backing Jago simply because he's got an impossible marriage.
I just thought I'd ask. Of course, those who don't want Jago won't take it quietly. They'll have a good deal to say about academic distinction and the like.
They already have.
Well, I know more about that than they do. For which they'll never forgive me. Why can't they see what really matters? I want a man who knows something about himself and is appalled and has to forgive himself to go on.
Eustace! Hello. Hello, Eustace!
Hello.
I thought you were in the Balkans.
Well, I was, and I aim to go back there. Praise the Lord. I had lunch in Split 36 hours ago. Split. Split! Oh, I love the Slavs. Absurd names. Far more absurd than the Italians. Astonishingly beautiful, the people. Astonishingly prudish, too. Why is it that people get more prudish when they get more beautiful? Law of nature, I suppose. And a very stupid one. I must get some tea before old Gay scoffs it all.
I love that man.
We all do. I must confess to having reservations about an enfant terrible of 74.
Hello.
How are you?
How are you, Crystal?
I'm Getlef, sir.
I congratulate you. Have a lemon cod tart.
Thank you.
Not at all. I'm glad to see you, Calvert. Haven't you been in Germany?
Yes, sir.
I hadn't forgotten you. Where in Germany, may I ask?
Berlin.
A fine city, Berlin. A fine university. I was once given an honorary degree there. I remember to this day being met at the station by one of the scholars. Fine scholars they have there. Professor M. Gay, I think. The great authority on the sagas. His very words. What do you think of that, Elliot? What do you think of that, Calvert?
Very good.
I had to demur. You can call me the authority on the sagas if you like. The authority without the great. Have you had any of this excellent stick-jaw cake?
I was thinking it might be a little too heavy for me, sir.
I must congratulate the steward. Winslow, I congratulate you on the remarkably fine tea you've given us today.
My dear senior fellow, I was a most uninspired steward, and I gave up being so 25 years ago.
I congratulate the new steward for me. Tell him for me he's doing splendid work.
When I go back in a few weeks... Gentlemen, when the master asked me to act as his deputy less than 2 months ago, I fully expected to see him back in the saddle again before the end of term. It's my painful duty to tell you that I was under a misapprehension. You confirm, Dr. Crawford, that the master's days on earth are numbered.
I confirm that. Speaking for the moment not as a fellow, but as a man of some medical experience, I must add that the end cannot be long. The college must be prepared to have lost its master by the end of the term.
Poor bastard.
Indeed, very sad. But he's been living on one floor for some time, hasn't he?
That was the last master but one.
We're talking about Royce.
Indeed, Royce, you didn't make that clear. Surely he's a very young man. We only elected him just the other day.
13 years ago, to be precise.
Precisely. So he's going, is he? Oh, well, it'll be a sad break from the past.
I suggest, with your permission, Mr. Deputy, that our first priority should be to discuss the vacancy.
I don't understand.
My dear Dean, I am inured to a woeful lack of intellectual grasp among my colleagues, but Getlef could hardly have brought a simple matter more clearly to the point.
My point is that it's contrary to statutes. The college as a college can't take any action until the mastership is vacant. It isn't. I move next business.
This is formalism carried to extreme limits.
The matter's got to be discussed.
I'm sure the Dean never intended to suggest anything else. For my part, I'm all in favour of talking the matter over privately.
You mean rather than have it out in the open, you'd like us to dissolve into cabals, which you might be able to manipulate?
I think the Dean and I both believe that with a little private discussion, the college may be able to reach a very substantial measure of agreement.
That's a rare and beautiful prospect.
Oh, for pity's sake, we can't possibly have a meeting about a new master when the man who ought to be presiding doesn't even know that he's condemned. I've never known such extraordinary lack of feeling.
I agree.
You can't run a college on sheer sentiment.
It'll be a poor place if you cut out decent feeling.
We're electing a master, you know, not a clerk.
If the college is misguided enough to elect your candidate, I shall beg to be excused if I sometimes fail to make the distinction.
Mr. Deputy, the master of this college is at present lying in his lodge and has asked you to preside in his place. We are all aware that we must settle on someone to succeed him, but please let us do it in our own way. It would be utterly offensive to good manners as well as to good taste to insist on doing it here in this room in a meeting of which the unhappy Royce is still the head.
Those who are not disposed to vote for the senior tutor may care to discuss other candidates for the mastership. I suggest a meeting in my rooms at 2:30 on Friday the 22nd. G.H. Winslow.
So, Crawford and Jago. In the middle, we have Royce. Now, Crystal, Nightingale, Elliot,
Calvert, and Brown. How's the Crawford faction shaping up?
No one's declared himself yet.
He's declared himself anyway. Fains I sit next to him in hall if no one else turns up. And Despard Smith.
Well, it was only to be expected.
Despard Smith. Now, he ought to know better.
Voting for the programme, not the man.
Gets stuffier as he gets older.
How in God's name did he decide?
Judas?
Apparently not.
Is that it, then?
Looks like it.
Only 4 for Crawford. We're home and dry.
As I understand, Brown, Nightingale and Luke are prepared to vote for Jago without qualifications. Elliot and Calvert support him against any candidate so far mentioned. Pilbrow supports him against Crawford. Right. I'm not going to waste your time with the speech. I can go at least as far as Pilbrow, and I think I find myself with Elliot and Calvert. I'm for Jago against Crawford and any other names I've heard to date. I'm not prepared to go the whole way just yet. I don't think Jago's an ideal candidate. He's not well enough known outside. But he'll do.
Bingo.
I'm truly touched at you being willing to overlook our differences and support me.
Well, I think we're old enough and ugly enough to distinguish between a man and his politics, as long as you don't expect me to embrace yours.
Or vice versa.
Well, there you are, then. The person you ought to be touched about is young Luke.
He's your most enthusiastic supporter.
And he's acting against his own best interests.
Not, of course, that he's the only scientist to be doing that.
No, indeed.
Thank you. I think I'm better with young men than with people my own age. Don't have to show off to them, you see.
Mr. Luke, can't believe that I've never set foot inside the Master's Lodge, Paul.
It's just that the occasion has never arisen.
Oh, don't you believe it? Lady Muriel's too much of a snob to allow the mere wives of fellows inside it. Unless, of course, they're titled.
Oh, I think that's rather harsh.
The fact remains that I can't be expected to have the place fit to live in for 6 months after we move. I shall be a burden to you anyway. The least I can do is get the lodge in order. I must have a fair chance to do it.
That woman's a confounded nuisance.
Sure you'll manage wonderfully.
I would have thought the most...
What are you two hatching?
To tell you the truth, we're searching for a way to bring a potential benefactor up to scratch.
By the way, don't mention it to Winslow.
It only needs one acid remark from him to send our man to the other place.
With your knowledge of London, say Sir Horace Timberlake would be good for a gift of
£100,000, wouldn't you?
more or less. I think you could take it out of petty cash.
That makes it even more important that he's handled right.
Elliot, can you spare us a moment?
Of course. Softly does it.
Nightingale and I have been discussing the future of the college. And that depends to a large extent on the men that we attract to office. So we've been speculating as to which of our colleagues might consider taking the various college offices.
These things have a way of being settled in advance.
I hope it won't embarrass you to mention your own future. It's difficult, I know. One can't pledge oneself too far ahead.
Well, you can rule me out as a possible contender for the other tutorship, if that's what you're getting at.
Why? Why can we rule you out?
Well, I don't want to break my London connection, and I can't spend 3 days a week in London and hold office here.
Your 3 days must be exceptionally well paid.
It's valuable for the college to have its young lawyers taught by a practicing consultant.
Sounds pretty valuable for Elliot. Thank you.
Bloody man.
I hope you contained yourself.
It's despicably tactful. I'm so sorry.
You had to do it.
It's known as realpolitik.
It's also known as craven prevarication. I fully intend to offer the other tutorship to Getlif.
It would be fatal to give other people the impression that you considered the mastership to be a foregone conclusion.
Sorry. I shall be very careful.
And you won't mind my saying one more thing. Will you make sure that everyone connected with you is careful too?
I'm already sure of that.
Anyone else would know what to say. I wanted to give you a few weeks of hope. Dear God, why can I never put one word in front of another? I've been lying to you. You've got cancer. It's inoperable.
Your Aunt Barr always warned me that you had no tenderness. I never deemed that to be true. Another husband might have brought it out in you. But then, you never understood my jokes. Joke? The wonder is, we've battled through a quarter of a century together.
There are the children.
Yes. How long have I got? No more lies.
A month at most.
Think I'd like a little time to myself.
Yes. Of course.
Muriel, it can't have been an easy choice for you. But I had no idea until today. We're all alone, aren't we? Each one of us. Quite alone. It's hard to think without a future.
I was less use than ever.
I've never seen such human misery and loneliness.
Do you have any news for me?
Oh, I'm sorry. No luck for you with the Royal Society this time, I'm afraid.
If you'll excuse us, Percy.
Yes. Would seem a good idea to get our young friend to bed.
Calvert drunk?
I believe the condition is charitably described as wearing vine leaves in his hair.
I begin to worry about that young man.
Not to mention what he's doing to the reputation of the master's daughter.
It can't have been a pretty scene to witness.
Nonetheless, Jago's tendency to over-emote does seem to be infecting his supporters.
But is it Calvert who endows them with their raffishness? Or is it Jago's absurd wife? The suburbs of Birmingham will be a come-down after Lady Muriel.
Nightingale, won't you break the habit of a lifetime and join us in a glass of claret?
Yes, perhaps I will. Thank you, Bertha.
Selecting people for honorific purposes is a very interesting job. There are no exact criteria. That's why you're right to persevere with the Royal.
Imagine the prospect of electing my successor is generating more heat than light.
In a word, yes.
It's remarkable. People always believe if they support a candidate, they'll be guaranteed his backing for life. Sheer illusion. In fact, one tends to be irritated by one's supporters. They try to catch one's eye, smirk.
Gratitude plays some strange tricks.
Gratitude isn't an emotion, but the expectation of gratitude is a very lively one. Huh? Now tell me, who's going to get it?
It's between Crawford and Jago at the moment.
Do what you can to get Jago in. He'll never become wise, of course. He'll always be a bit of an ass. And that wife of his is a formidable handicap. But he tries. And he cares. Crawford's merely bumptious, like all scientists.
Jago's only one ahead.
Who's gone over?
Nightingale. Well, if no one else decides to switch, there's only one way that either of them can get a clear majority.
If someone else decides to switch.
Or gets pressured into it.
I hope you like this in the morning. Crystal and I are rather given to it. Now then, as things stand, Jago has 6 votes against Crawford's 5. Since both of the candidates have agreed to abstain, neither can obtain the 7 votes required for a majority. If we can't break this stalemate, under statute, the bishop has the absolute right to appoint whoever he chooses to the mastership. It's my considered opinion that he'll look to an outsider. In fact, I can't see that he has any alternative in the present circumstances.
The college just divided, I agree.
I take it none of us wants that. I don't.
I'd be less than ecstatic.
We'd be buying a pig in a poke.
I don't want it.
Nor I.
I would regard it as catastrophic.
But, moved as I am by the idyllic prospect of the lion lying down with the lamb, I've yet to see how the end, which it seems we all desire, can be achieved.
I suggest we tell the candidates we will not tolerate this matter going to the bishop. We tell them that they must vote for each other. It's the only way to bring a clear majority of all the fellows within reach.
And if they refuse?
We threaten them with another candidate. But one we choose, not one the bishop fobs off on us.
Well, gentlemen?
Well, our answers are tales soon told. The senior tutor and I have had a word about your ultimatum. We haven't any option but to accept it.
I'm very glad to hear it.
Speaking as a private person, I don't take much exception to what you want us to do. I do take mild exception to the way you've done it.
I take the greatest possible exception to that.
I should leave it alone.
Why couldn't this have been handled decently among us?
We were anxious to get everything in order.
They reason to treat us like college servants?
Since when have college servants been required to vote for each other? Mind you, I can think of some whose mental equipment is markedly superior to the senior tutors.
I asked for that. Anyone who's fool enough to stand for office asks for any kind of hurt he gets. My enemies have taught me that lesson already. I'm only sorry that my friends should have seen fit to endorse it. I shall vote for Crawford at the election, Mr. Deputy.
Well, I know what he means. But I think he might have given you credit for an astonishing maneuver, Dean. Particularly since it gives him the clear majority.
At the moment.
I'm glad to have your approval.
My rueful admiration, really.
Calls the college bell to toll. If I might have your attention, gentlemen. That was a message from the lodge. The master has been called to meet his maker.
A sad occasion indeed, but another splendid tea.
I trust you're not going to congratulate me on it?
Certainly not. You were a most uninspired steward, and you gave up being so 25 years ago. I'm going to congratulate the man responsible. Getliff as our present steward. I congratulate you on a magnificent tea.
Thank you, senior fellow.
Splendid work you scientists are doing. Pray be seated, gentlemen.
I see the old man's got all his buttons on today.
He's also got his hearing aid in, Calvert, so let's have no more witty asides. Now then, we need a notice typed out. Let me just see if this is in order. Owing to the death of Mr. Vernon Rice, there is a vacancy in the office of master of this college. The fellows will meet in the chapel to elect a master according to the statutes D2F at 10 o'clock in the morning of March the 19th, 1937. That seems fair enough. Does everyone understand? Where's Pilbrow?
In the Balkans.
Again? Does anyone know his address?
It's in the bursary. Why?
I count upon you to telegraph this intelligence to him presently.
Very well.
Who is the junior fellow?
I am, sir.
Ah, look, I congratulate you. Equip yourself with drawing pins and wait upon us at the chapel door in the morning at 10 o'clock. Excellent! That's well done. Anyone can see there's a vacancy with half an eye.
I should like to keep this business on a friendly basis, Jago.
For my part, I very much hope we can.
A pious but improbable aspiration.
Ah, Eustace!
I just got back. Saw your light. I especially wanted to see you before you went to bed.
What can I get you?
No, nothing. Elliot, things have never been worse in Europe. All our friends are in danger. Everything that you and I believe in. And those fools and snobs who are supposed to be running the country are blinding themselves to it. I can't vote for Jago. I can't vote for anyone who doesn't throw his weight in on our side. And it's your side as well as mine. That's why I wanted to tell you first.
What are you going to do?
I vote for the other man. He's on the right side. We can trust him in that way.
You've always been fond of Jago.
Well, I am. He's warm. He's got a great gift of warmth.
You don't even like Crawford.
But that's beside the point.
He might be on the right side in politics, but you know he hasn't the slightest feeling for anything else we care about. Well, if the books you've devoted your life to were to disappear tomorrow, he wouldn't even notice.
Well, we've got to sacrifice something. If we don't sacrifice something, there'll be nothing left at all.
You know what it will mean for Jago?
Yes.
Doesn't it affect you?
Very much. But it's no good. I can't bear to have it said that I helped the wrong side.
It's my fault.
Oh, no. Don't be absurd.
Finally, Mrs. Crawford appears to many members of the college to be well fitted for the position of master's wife. This is not necessarily true of a candidate's wife, and they attach great weight to that consideration.
Oh, here.
Oh, what does that mean? Unless they all hate me.
Have you the faintest idea what that might mean to a woman?
Jago, I very much regret this should have happened. I shall write to your wife personally and tell her so.
That's not enough.
It's all I can do, unfortunately.
No, you can find out which of your supporters sent it to her.
Jago, I can understand your feelings, but you exaggerate my responsibility. I'm sincerely sorry that your wife should have suffered. I consider it my duty to tell her so. I do not consider it my duty to become a private detective.
I consider it your duty to
I
behave.
have consented to be a candidate in this election, but I've had no part whatever in any of the personal complications which have taken place. I take this opportunity of saying how much I deprecate them. Now, won't you join us in a glass of wine?
No, my wife needs me.
I always think the danger with any group of men like ours is that we tend to get on each other's nerves. I also think that we ought to set for ourselves an almost artificially high standard of manners and behavior. Nightingale, are you busy? You might walk part of the way home. Gentlemen.
I'm bound to say, I thought Crawford handled that with dignity and firmness.
As you can see, you're in a unique position. There are 6 votes for each man without you. Well, if it's understood that you vote for Crawford, then the whole thing's cut and dried.
Cut and dried? I don't like the sound of that.
It means the chapel election is just a formality.
And you two want me to change my mind?
Of course. I very much hope you will.
Crawford's a very sound man, you know.
Jago's a very sound man, too.
Of course. I've got nothing but good to say about Jago. But tell me, why do you prefer him so much?
Because we like him better.
You've spoken like an honest man. I congratulate you, Calvert.
Thank you.
You're so much closer to the candidates than I. I've always valued the contribution of youth. I respect your judgment. Indeed, I do.
Then you'll think of Jago?
I shall certainly think of Jago. And I congratulate you on presenting the situation to me in such a splendid way. I'm inclined to reserve my vote. In fact, I shall write Despard Smith telling him that's what I propose. Casting vote. It's a line for me.
Isn't it wonderful?
It's wonderful. I don't know how to thank you, Elliot. Then I don't know what I would have done without you throughout this whole Richard business.
I got you into it.
Yes, okay, though. This changes everything.
He didn't make an absolute commitment. Don't hope for too much.
But it's not lost.
There's only one more day till the election.
It's a long time in college politics.
I have it in mind to transfer to you a capital sum of £120,000, which I take to be the equivalent of 6 fellowships. 5 of these are to be limited to scientific and engineering subjects, and the 6th may be held in any subject that the college thinks fit. You will appreciate that this letter is not a formal offer, and I shall crystallize my ideas further if I learn that the general scheme is acceptable to the college.
Crikey. So, Sir Horace Timberlake has finally unbelted, has he?
To some effect. This is the largest benefaction the college has ever had. I call this a day.
Yes, it'll make an incalculable difference. Good work, Christopher.
Oh, Brown's the one you ought to thank. He tutored young Timberlake. He hooked Sir Horace. Without him, we shouldn't have come within shouting distance.
No. It's the time and trouble, the boundless time and trouble that the Dean has bestowed upon this benefaction that has secured it.
Correct me if I am wrong. Do I gather that the junior tutor and the Dean have been discussing the finances of the college with Sir Horace?
In the vaguest of terms. We'd no idea he was going to make a concrete proposition.
If we had, we'd have brought you in, I assure you.
That goes without saying.
I'm much affected by that assurance. I'm also very much affected by the thought of the Dean spending all that time and trouble, boundless time and trouble, without ever dreaming that a benefaction might ensue.
I'm sure I speak for the Dean as well as for myself when I say that nothing would distress us more than that the bursar should feel slighted in the least.
I've never had much opinion of myself as bursar. It's interesting to hear that others share the same view. It looks at any rate as if my judgment remains unimpaired, which will be some consolation to me in my retirement.
I hope you're not suggesting.
I'm not suggesting, I'm resigning.
But the circumstances are right out of control. We can't have this. We can't have this.
I don't follow you.
We're exchanging a fine bursar for a rich man's charity. I don't like it.
It's not our fault.
It doesn't make it any more palatable. Winslow, I want you to know that we are more distressed than I can say. In one office or another, you've guided this college all your life. In your years as bursar, the college has never been so rich, and it would be shameful for us to forget that or ignore it. If it's to be a choice between you and the proposed benefaction, there can be no doubt. Sir Horace will just have to be told to find another use for this money. Well, really? Won't you reconsider?
No resignation can be offered or accepted while the college is without a master.
In that case, the new master will have a pleasant duty for his first.
I was looking for you earlier. I came upon this moselle, which I thought might amuse you. Let me take your coat.
I can't stop. I went to see Crawford after the meeting. I've been with him ever since. I've heard his views on the college. I like them. I've decided to vote for him. He's the better man.
You've left it very late.
I never made any secret of my reservations about Jago.
You contracted to him.
If I did, he absolved me by this morning's extraordinary outburst. To cock a snook at the Timberlake benefaction is one thing. But to do it on the grounds of Winslow's abilities as bursar, it's absurd. The man's been a dismal bursar. If he'd been a ha'porth of good, we'd never have kept him out. Besides, it only needed one of his sarcasms for Timberlake to bestow his bounty on the other place.
I keep thinking about the things we've brought off together. We should never have managed them alone.
You've never needed to explain anything to each other before.
That's been true for a good many years. It's a pity to find ourselves divided now.
Do you think I don't feel that? It can't be helped. I'm sorry. I'm driven to conclude that Jago's entirely lacking in practical sense.
Ryan? I'm sorry. It's no truth, son. You mean it?
I hadn't realized that you had already informed Jago. I rather got the impression you were speaking to me first.
A lot of people seem to have got the wrong impression. It would be extraordinary if they hadn't.
I'm not taking your strictures, Jago.
At last I can say what I think.
It'll be a new departure for you to think before you speak.
This isn't very profitable.
You never made any pretense that you wanted me as master on my merits. You decided that of the two frontrunners, I was slightly the less unpleasing candidate.
There's something in that.
But there's everything in it. We had a working understanding which wasn't very flattering to me. Well, very well, let's implement it.
What do you mean?
The election is tomorrow. This is too serious for us to indulge our likes and dislikes now. If it takes all night, I'm willing to hammer out whatever arrangement you want that makes it possible for you to vote for me.
Sorry, Jago. You have the advantage over Crawford in some respects. I've always said that, and I stick by it. But by and large, he will make a better master than you would have done. I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's not always the best man who's suitable to be a master.
Ah! Now you're going to patronize me.
You never give anyone but yourself credit for decent intentions. If you had...
I regard it as useless for either of you to say any more.
I shall abstain.
You gave your word to vote for Crawford.
You gave your word to vote for me. So did Pilbrow, so did Nightingale. Am I the only man who has to keep faith?
Abstaining won't do you any good.
It will if I get Gay's vote.
You can't count on that.
Winslow might switch.
One vote won't give you the mastership.
No, but if I get one vote and abstain myself, it'll be 6-6. Stalemate again. I won't get in, but neither will Crawford. And you will have the bishop's appointee wished on you after all.
That would split the college for years.
It would be disastrous.
Then you'd better keep your word, hadn't you? I apologize if I'm late, Signor Fellow.
Gentlemen, with God's help, and no thought of gain or loss or worldly considerations whatsoever, you will now elect as master that man who, in your belief, will best maintain and increase the well-being and glory of this college. Do you vow this in sincerity and truth?
I vow this in sincerity and truth.
Then I call upon you in turn to stand and declare your choice, beginning with the junior fellow.
I, Walter John Luke, vote for Dr. Paul Jago.
It's one vote for Dr. Jago.
Roy Clement Edward Calvert elects Paul Jago.
2 for Dr. Jago.
Lewis Stephen Elliott elects Paul Jago.
3.
Francis Getliff elects Thomas Crawford.
There's one for Crawford.
I, Ronald Edmund Nightingale, vote for Redvers Thomas Arbuthnot Crawford.
2 for Dr. Crawford.
Charles Crystal elects Thomas Crawford.
That makes 3 for each candidate.
Arthur Brown elects Paul Jago.
That's 3 for Crawford and 4 for Jago.
Senior tutor, I must ask you to declare.
I, Paul Jago, elect Thomas Crawford.
Redvers Thomas Arbuthnot Crawford chooses Paul Jago.
Mr. Winslow elects Dr. Crawford.
One moment. I make that 5 votes for each candidate.
Albert Theophilus Despard Smith awards his vote to Redvers Thomas Arbuthnot Crawford.
Eustace Pilbrow elects Dr. Crawford.
That's a majority.
Not so fast, not so fast.
I, Morris Harvey, Lawrence Gay, Senior Fellow of this college, and Emeritus Professor in this university, to cast my vote for Paul Jago as Master of this college. Yes, well done. Come and check the figures, Junior Fellow. What do you make it?
7 votes against 6.
I congratulate you. That's a clear majority, is it not?
Yes.
I agree. Dr. Redvers Thomas Arbuthnot Crawford.
Senior Fellow.
I declare you elected this day Master of the College. And now I give the college into your charge.
I thank you, Senior Fellow. I thank the college.
Nuts and wine, capital.
Now, I think we must have a change. Gay, you must take my right hand again. That goes without saying. Crystal, I should like you up here. The rest of you, please find your own places.
Imagine what Jago must be going through.
Yes.
Tell me what happened. She split. Yes, I
Jago. Come, sit by me.
Thank you, Crystal. I'm so very sorry to have missed your first dinner in Hall. I had something to discuss with my wife. I'd hoped to be in time to drink your health. I think I can claim one privilege. That is what my wife and I have been discussing. We feel that you should be our guest before you go to anyone else. Would you dine with us tomorrow night? Master?
It will be a pleasure.
Gentlemen, our new master.
Master.